Welcome to Independent Minds. For those of you who are new here, Independent Minds is a Pictet podcast that brings you
accessible business insight that's unscripted and conversational.
Today is our 1-year anniversary.
So what we're doing is we've looked at quite a few of the podcasts we've done, and we're taking paraphrased quotes from these podcasts, and in classic Independent Minds style, we're going to discuss them. It's going to be unscripted, it's going to be conversational, and we're going to give our authentic opinion.
Guessing game. It's a guessing game.
It's a guessing game. So I'm going to give a quote, Guy's going to go, it's that person, and then we're going to discuss it.
All right, Angelica, you go first.
We are living through the pre-chasm phase of AI. A moment as foundational as the early days of the internet or the Industrial Revolution, where the real revolution is not about building more AI tools, but about building AI literacy from the ground up. The biggest risk is not that AI will replace humans, but that a vast majority will be left behind simply because they never learned how to use it. Ask the right questions or understand its role as a tool rather than a replacement. The future will not be defined by who has access to AI, but who knows how to think with it. Who is that?
This one is easy. This is Ideja. She's one of our youngest founders. Yeah. Her superpower is her eloquence. We were talking about the fact that there's this anxiety surrounding AI where people feel like it's going to replace them. And her whole view on that is that it's simply a tool and you need to know how to use it.
What we spoke about in this interview is in the sort of 80s and 90s, when the calculator came out, there were protests in the street because people were like, this is going to put maths teachers out of the job. It's going to completely change industries. It didn't put maths teachers out of job. People simply adapted. Is how Ideja sees AI. It's something which people adapt to use.
I remember when she was speaking, the example that she gave about the first version of AI, Edna.
Something like that.
Something like that, which is basically like Apple's version of Alexa. And she was saying that the key differentiator there was how the AI tool was feeding answers to you, right? And the way that it works now is that it mimics sort of human speech, and it's just more accessible because it's easier to converse with.
So the huge change in that was making it accessible through that interface. Should I read the context?
Read the context.
Gaia, you guessed that correctly. Well done. Big clap. Big clap from the audience.
That was easy, though. That was easy.
It was easy.
Because Ideja was all AI, and she was one of my favorite ones.
Ideja, founder of Advanced AI, argues that the true challenge and opportunity of the AI era isn't about building more advanced tools, but about ensuring everyone develops the literacy and mindset to use AI thoughtfully, so that society isn't split between those who can think with AI and those who are left behind.
Right, my turn. Okay. Are you ready?
Wait, choose a random one.
The real revolution in retail isn't about more data or better ads. It's about making loyalty radically accessible and frictionless, turning what was once a fragmented, nice-to-have afterthought into the most powerful, measurable, and direct form of marketing. The future belongs not to the brands with the biggest budgets, but to those who can aggregate, simplify, and democratize loyalty, transforming it from a scattered patchwork of points and cards into a seamless, universal experience that actually works for both businesses and consumers. That was very eloquent. Who's that?
Matthew.
Yes. Matthew.
Matthew from Squid. This one was really interesting because just before we did this interview, I'd watched either like a Channel 4 or like an ITV short thing about Tesco's and about loyalty cards at Tesco's or Sainsbury's. One of the things that they were saying in this like short documentary was that Tesco's really push forwards the Tesco's Club Card app because Tesco's not only does you as the consumer get a discount, but Tesco's then know what your purchasing habits are, which then impacts what stock you buy. So then they know what stock to put forward. They know where to direct their advertisement in either regionally speaking or consumer speaking. Yeah. So it basically gives huge insight into the retailer of where to put their funds. But for the consumer, you get the benefit of having cost prices.
I think I agree with you. And I remember one of the most interesting points that he made off the back of this was basically that data is the most important sort of piece of information that they're getting off the back of this. And that's how they're planning to make the business profitable. For us, it's interesting because we obviously are marketeers. That's what we do. And I think for people who aren't in the industry, it's not something that they would think of. If you think of marketing, you think of creativity, right? But ultimately,
it's very data-driven.
What's happening now is that it's becoming more and more data-driven. It's about finding that balance between something that creatively and instinctively you think will work. So statistics is important, which is something I found out on the job. I'm not very happy about because I hate maths, but there you go.
Do you want to read context?
Yes. Matthew, co-founder of Squid, explains how the retail loyalty landscape is shifting from fragmented, hard-to-use programs to a unified, accessible model, where loyalty becomes the most effective and measurable form of marketing. There you go. Not just a customer perk.
You need to guess who it is. You need to address a need, not create a need. I'd always rather be in a position of solving a real existing problem, something people already struggle with, rather than trying to invent demand for something totally new. Trying to re-educate consumers or shift their habits is one of the hardest, most expensive, and most uncertain things you can do as a founder. It takes enormous time and resources. And even then, it doesn't always work. The most successful products are the ones that fit seamlessly into people's lives and solve a pain point they already recognize.
This is Ed McDermott.
Well done.
He marks the shift that we went through from interviewing super young startup-focused companies to interviewing seasoned founders. And this actually perfectly encapsulates that mentality shift, because what he's saying is really interesting, because all of the founders that we interviewed before him were in a different position to him, because he has always worked in very regulated industries with very technical products that solve a very real need, right?
He was a bit older as well.
He was older.
And typically the people we'd interviewed by this point were all 35 and under.
Yeah. Whilst the founders that we interviewed in the beginning of the podcast most of them were consumer brands where marketing plays a huge role. And as much as their products are wanted, they aren't necessarily needed. All products that hinge heavily on marketing and that operate in a very saturated market. And I think that is interesting, because that speaks to this shift in entrepreneurship as a whole.
It absolutely does. And I remember the example he gave was somebody coming to him and basically saying, I've got a fork, but this fork has 4 prongs, not just 3. And him being like, a fork's a fork. And it's the same thing with businesses.
How many people have bought something on Instagram that they don't really need, but that they create needs? That's the thing. It's about creating a need, not satisfying a pre-existing one. It's about the concept of need versus want. And I think that speaks to a larger sort of
psychological positioning,
anthropological, evolutionary phase that we're going through as human beings because of social media.
And also, not to dive really deep into it, but then it also speaks to the quick dopamine hit, which you get when you buy something which you think you really need, but that's going down a whole different road. Shall I read the context? Ed, founder of Clean Food Group, is a serial entrepreneur in the food tech space, reflecting on the challenges of launching new products and companies. He shares a hard-won lesson about what it really takes to succeed, especially when it comes to changing consumer behavior.
The most fatal human mistake is to back a founder who is so attached to their company and their own ego that they're unwilling to step aside or find a new role when it's needed. Founders can kill companies as well as start them. The best founders understand the Solomon parable. Their job is to create something that can survive beyond, this is so poetic, beyond them, even if that means letting go of the leadership role for the sake of the company's future.
And Glover. There was a lot of reference to a business is like a child, and at some point a mother has to let go of its child in the same way a founder has to let go of its child. And can the child function on its two legs by itself?
I think it also speaks to what we've seen with lots of the founders that we interviewed before her, which is the concept of the difficulty of not associating your sense of self and your sense of worth to your business.
Your identity.
Especially for young founders who are, they haven't been through as much life as more seasoned founders. And so
we say as we're 25-year-olds.
Exactly. You're still developing your sense of self. It's like a relationship. If you've been in a relationship for 8 years since you've been 15, you are going to be inextricably tied to that person. I think it's very easy to relate to because it's so applicable to so many different aspects of a person's life. Anne was a good one. Oh, context, sorry, yeah. Dame Anne Glover, co-founder and CEO of Amadeus Capital, reflects on decades of investing in technology startups and the human factors that most often determine whether a company succeeds or fails.
The secret to my career has been having an independent mind and a clear vision. But above all, it's been about figuring it out, especially when there's no manual. Early on, I thought I had to figure it out by myself, but I've learned that's impossible. The real breakthrough is building a culture where everyone, no matter how junior, feels empowered to raise their hand and help solve the problem. Confidence is like a muscle. You build it by taking risks, by crumbling sometimes, and by trusting your team. In the end, you can't figure it out alone, and that's what makes the journey worthwhile. Correct.
I think what she's saying about the importance of building a team and a culture where everyone feels like they can create something, even if they're as junior as we are, is something that we've experienced in our workplace.
Because it gives you ownership and it gives you inspiration and it makes you want to come into work rather than just going and taking a paycheck, basically.
Exactly. And I think the whole concept of, well, obviously she quoted the podcast, which is amazing. And the whole concept of an independent mind, I think, has so many ramifications to it. But then it's also interesting because this perspective is very much a startup approach, right? That's what startup founders do all the time. They don't have a booklet with instructions, they figure it out. And I think it was interesting to hear this perspective from a seasoned professional, because she is in a later stage of her career, to see how she expressed that and to see how she still embraces it now at this stage of her career, I think was very inspiring.
I think so too. And I think she was also given a really difficult but really exciting challenge, which was to rebrand Bombardier. And I think in that point, like, you have to really take a risk with that and also have your team supporting you. Should I give you context?
Yes, please.
Eve Laurier, Global Head of Marketing and Communications at Bombardier, describes her unconventional path to leadership and the mindset that has defined both her career and the company's culture. She emphasizes that in a complex, high-stakes industry like aviation, success comes not from having all the answers, but from embracing the challenge to figure it out.
If I could give my younger self advice, it would be to slow down and get a bit more experience. Maybe even work for someone else for a while. But the truth is, I've always just wanted the freedom to figure things out my own way. Building a business is about embracing the unknown, taking risks and learning as you go. The hardest part is letting go, realizing that a real business is one that can run without you. That's the ultimate test. Can you step back, trust your team, and know you've built something that stands on its own? And what's important to mention here as well is that, again, this was very relevant to what he was going through. Why am I saying this? You haven't guessed yet. I'm not going to say that. Was it
Dominic?
Yes.
Yeah.
But what's important to mention is that it's very relevant to what he was going through, because he was speaking about stepping down as CEO and giving his team space and letting go of his baby.
I agree. I mean, if I remember correctly, he didn't work in corporate for long. I don't think, did he work in corporate at all? He didn't work in corporate at all, and he went pretty much straight into running his own businesses, and he'd appeared on Dragon's Den. What was interesting about speaking to him is that there was never any alternative path. That was always what he was going to do. He was never going to go into something corporate and kill himself over a vision that wasn't his. Yeah. And I think out of all the entrepreneurs we've spoken to, that's all some sort of shared mentality that they have, that if they're going to work for a vision, it needs to be a vision they truly believe in.
What's interesting with Dominic, and this is something we spoke about with him, I remember, he was saying that after he stepped down from this business, he wanted to pick up so many other things. And I think he's just one of those people who needs to feel constantly stimulated.
But I think it's also a product of being an entrepreneur. Like, you're very creative.
But I think you are that innately.
You are that innately. You have these running thoughts where, as Ed was saying, if there's a problem, you want to solve it. Yeah. And then you sort of go down this rabbit hole of thoughts thinking, well, if I do this and I do that and I do this and I do that and I connect these dots and I know this person, that person, then we can put it all together and solve that issue.
And what's interesting is that Ed did mention, he did speak about, because as you said, he does also own a VC firm that invests in young startups. And he was saying that he can see when a founder it doesn't have what it takes to be a founder. And what that means is that then we spoke about the whole concept of entrepreneurship being glamorized and so many people going into it for the wrong reasons or going into it because they want to be their own boss. And when in reality, you are never your own boss, because if you're the founder of the company and you are other people's boss within the company, you need to
adhere to the people who have invested in you. There's always somebody above you.
Someone who holds you accountable.
There's that phrase that's like, a boss always has a boss.
Always.
Even if you're a founder. And then even if you are that boss, everyone's always, you're part of this big web of accountability, basically. Yeah. I think what obviously entrepreneurship does bring you is freedom of not freedom of time, flexibility of time.
Yes, you can manage your own schedule for sure. But I think also there's a misconception that the schedule is somehow going to be better or easier.
And that it's going to be like filled with Pilates and stuff.
Yeah,
like it's not. Like
it's not.
It's not.
That's true.
Shall I read you context? Dominic, co-founder of Cleanology, built a 25 million commercial cleaning and facilities management company from the ground up. First with his mother, then scaling through organic growth, acquisitions, and a willingness to figure it out at every stage. As he transitions from CEO to chairman, he reflects on the evolution from founder-led hustle to a mature, sustainable business and the importance of letting go so the company can thrive without him.
Is that it? That's the last one?
That's the last one.
All right.
But we now have our...
key takeaways.
We have 5 key takeaways. Guy, do you want to begin?
Yes. All right, so this is topical. The power of figuring it out. Each leader emphasizes the importance of embracing uncertainty, taking risks, and learning by doing, rather than waiting for perfect instructions or a clear roadmap. Success comes from a willingness to figure it out as you go, even and especially when the path isn't obvious.
And I think what's so interesting about this is that there are sort of 2 mindsets you can take with this. And I think embracing uncertainty is the antithesis to human nature. People want certainty. People want to know what they're waking up to tomorrow. People want to know if they're going to get that paycheck at the end of the month because you've got mortgages and you've got kids.
Not everyone, though, I think.
But even everyone,
some people find routine and
controlling.
repetition very limiting and confining.
For a lot of people, I think you have to overcome that fear and just trust the
For
process.
a big majority, yes. Yeah.
And just know that you're going to figure it out, know that it's going to work out, and just believe in your vision. So number 2, letting go and trusting others. A recurring theme is the realization that true leadership and true business maturity means being able to step back, trust your team, and allow others to take ownership. The ultimate test of a founder or leader is whether the business or project can thrive without them at the center.
The only reason why we didn't have this conversation with all of them is because obviously they were in different stages of their founder journey. And I think when, you're 2 or 3 years in and it's still very much in the, in an embryo phase, then it makes sense for you to think, this will be my thing and it will be forever. And then maybe those people were looking for certainty in that way. Maybe they were looking for something that was going to be their purpose for the rest of time.
A lot of them spoke about dropping the ego and just being able to step back and know that this isn't you. This is a business which you created, but it's not you.
And accepting the fact that it could fail, and that doesn't mean that you're a failure.
Yeah. And also giving that baby away and letting someone else take over it.
Right, next one. The value of team and culture. All founders highlight that building something lasting is never a solo act. The best outcomes come from empowering others, building a culture of trust, and creating an environment where everyone feels able to contribute their strengths.
Yeah, and I think that's applicable, not just outside of founder-led businesses, but also in
any corporate environment, any corporate setting.
If you look at the teams that thrive the best, they're the teams where they get on with their colleagues the best, where there's trust, where there's not much paranoia, where... each person's valued, where you're culture fit.
I think obviously it's easier for startups to achieve that, right? And the difficulty there is maintaining that as you scale, which is something we did talk about with our initial founders quite a bit. And I think it's obviously about hiring the right people, but then again, if you hire someone that shares your same values, then you have to trust them that they're going to do the same thing with their next hires.
Okay, number 4. Growth through experience and adaptation. There's a recognition that growth, both personal and organizational, comes from experience, adaptability, and sometimes even from making mistakes. Many wish they'd slowed down, sought more experience, or learned from others before jumping in, but also acknowledge that learning by doing is invaluable.
For younger founders especially, or for founders who don't have that much experience, it's a balancing act, really, and it's balancing that, youthful naivety, which in many ways is a driving force that brought them to where they are. If you overthink anything, or if you put too much thought into something, or speak to too many people, then you're just going to get really lost.
And that youthful naivety really comes into play when you reject people with experience. When you reject their ideas.
When you think your experience of it will be different, which, everyone's experience is unique. Yes, that does stand as an argument in some cases, but then obviously there is a reason. Right, last one. Refining success.
Redefining.
Right. Redefining success. Success is not just about personal achievement or control, but about building something that endures. serves others, and can stand on its own. The journey is as important as the destination, and fulfillment comes from seeing others grow and the business outlast the founder. That says it all.
So in summary, these founders all champion a mindset of curiosity, resilience, and humility, embracing the unknown, empowering others, and ultimately letting go so that what they've built can flourish independently, like an independent mind.
Perfect.